All right, and we're off. All right, so we welcome everyone to our virtual tour of the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. It's the most visited science museum in the world. Now, we don't use the phrase natural history very much anymore, so just be aware that a natural history museum is the same as a science museum. So today we'll explore some of the exhibits at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. Some of these exhibits have a connection with the Bible, and we'll talk about those. So in part one of our Creation 101 tour, we visited the rotunda and the first floor of the National Museum of Natural History. Now let's go up to the second floor. It totally rocks. The Smithsonian's mineral and gem collection consists of about 350,000 mineral specimens and 10,000 gems, making it one of the largest of its kind in the world. Many specialists say that this is the premier gem and mineral collection in the world. Now, an object defined as a jewel may be a precious stone, a gem. A gem is a cut and polished precious stone. Or a jewel may be a decorative ornament made of gold or silver that is set with such stones. Now today, only the diamond, emerald, ruby, and sapphire are strictly considered to be precious stones. And any other rare and beautiful stone is viewed as a semi-precious stone. However, the Hebrew term rendered precious stone in the Bible can have a broader application, as shown at Ezekiel chapter 28:13. It says, "You were adorned with every precious stone, ruby, topaz, and jasper, chrysolite, onyx, and jade, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald." Now, these precious stones are distinguished from other minerals mainly because they are rare, beautiful, and durable. It was getting close to my anniversary, and my wife was leaving all of these jewelry catalogs around the house. So I'm no dummy. I got her a magazine rack. Moving on. Ancient people knew how to round and polish precious stones, but they don't seem to have angled or faceted them like craftsmen do today. Now, jewels are mentioned in the Bible connected to the clothing of the high priest. His official attire would include jewels that had onyx stones and setting stones for the ephod and for the breastpiece. Now, the high priest's ephod had 2 onyx stones in the shoulder pieces, with the names of 6 of the 12 tribes of Israel inscribed on each stone. Now, the breastpiece of judgment was embellished with 4 rows of precious stones. The account says that the first row was a row of ruby, topaz, and emerald. The second row was turquoise, sapphire, and jasper. The third row was leshem stone, agate, and amethyst. Let's pause for a second. What is leshem stone? Well, actually, we're not sure. There are various stones, such as amber, hyacinth, opal, and tourmaline, have been suggested as being leshem stone, but we don't have enough evidence to say for sure. And the fourth row of the breastpiece was chrysolite, onyx, and jade. They were all set with settings of gold in their fillings. Speaking of gold, they have that here too. But other samples of gems can be seen at the museum. The 858-carat Gachala emerald was found in Colombia in 1967. Now, usually emeralds of this size and quality are not preserved they're usually cut up into many smaller gems. A man named Harry Winston donated the Gachala emerald to the Smithsonian in 1969. We'll talk more about Harry Winston later. The Hooker Emerald Brooch is an emerald brooch designed by Tiffany & Company. The emerald was made part of the crown jewels of the Ottoman Empire during the reign of Sultan Abdul Hamid II. He wore this emerald in his belt buckle, so he would have made a good Texan. It was donated by a woman named Janet Hooker in 1977, along with $5 million in cash. That is a sizable enough donation to get a new exhibition hall named after her. Now, although it's not at the Smithsonian, the world's largest cut emerald weighs 25 pounds and is valued at over $1 million. Now, the gem, called Teodora, or Gift of God in Portuguese, was mined in Brazil. There are some indications, though, that it might not be real. For example, its owner is reluctant to have it tested. Now, this one is real for sure. It's called the Lion and was discovered in a Zambian mine. It's worth $2.5 million. It is over 5,000 carats. It's said that emerald crystal has remarkable clarity and a perfectly balanced hue. Now, rubies are also represented at the Gems and Mineral exhibit. The Carmen Lucia ruby is the largest faceted ruby in the National Gem Collection at 23 carats, and it's one of the finest rubies known to exist. It's called the Carmen Lucia ruby because it was donated by a Dr. Peter Buck in memory of his wife, Carmen Lucia. Now, with its rich red color and well-defined star, the Rosser-Reeves star ruby might be the largest and finest star ruby in the world. Now, a star ruby is a special type of ruby that is very rare. When the light hits it, it forms a star pattern. And renowned for its impressive size, intense color, and sharp star, the Star of Asia is one of the world's finest star sapphires. Now, the star forms when titanium atoms are trapped within the growing crystal. As the crystal cools, the titanium forms these needle-like crystals which orient themselves in 3 directions. When it's properly cut, the light reflecting off of these 3 sets of needles produces a 6-rayed star. Now, the magnificent 423 carat Logan sapphire is one of the world's largest faceted blue sapphires. It is the heaviest mounted gem found in the National Gem Collection. The Logan sapphire was a gift to the Smithsonian from Rebecca Logan, hence the name Logan sapphire. Now, let's look at a very famous gem, the Hope diamond. Now, the famous Hope diamond is thought to have come from India. It has boron in it, which gives it its rare blue color for a diamond. In 1666, the French gem merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernet bought this very rare blue-colored diamond and sold it to Louis XIV. It was cut into a triangular stone weighing 68 carats. In 1792, it was stolen while Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were awaiting execution, and that stone was never seen again. But in 1830, a 45 carat blue diamond showed up on the market. Now, was it a cut down version of the larger one that had once belonged to Louis XIV? Yeah, probably. After all, how many large blue diamonds are there? The stone was bought around 1830 by a rich London banker named Thomas Hope. And it stayed in the Hope family for a while, but was then passed around to many jewelers, wealthy socialites, and even sultans. It became the possession of diamond merchant Harry Winston in 1949, and he donated it to the Smithsonian a few years later. Now, most diamonds, when they are first found and mined, are 8-sided transparent crystals and are composed of nearly pure carbon. Now, diamonds are thought to have been formed long ago when the Earth's carbon was subjected to great pressure and heat inside the Earth. Now, early diamonds were simply found lying in the middle of stream beds. But in modern times, diamonds are usually mined from rocks deep within the Earth. Now, the Foxfire diamond seen here was temporarily on display at the Smithsonian. It is 4 times larger than the Hope diamond at 187 carats. It was found in Canada. But it is still not the largest quality diamond ever found. The largest was the 3,000 carat Cullinan diamond, which was discovered in South Africa in 1905. What we're looking at, is actually a replica of the diamond. It was eventually cut down into 2 enormous high-quality stones. One of them was 530 carats, and the other one 317 carats. Both of those diamonds are now part of the British crown jewels. There we go. The largest diamond is in the scepter, and the smaller one is in the crown below the ruby. The rest of that gigantic diamond was cut into smaller stones. Speaking of the crown jewels, do you know who owns them? He does. Now, the diamond can be viewed as another example of God's power. It's the hardest common natural mineral and among the most valuable of gems. Let's look at some examples in the Bible where diamonds are mentioned for their hardness. For example, in Jeremiah 17:1, God referred to the use of diamonds for scratching or engraving hard materials when he said, "The sin of Judah is written down with an iron stylus. With a diamond point, it is engraved on the tablet of their heart and on the horns of their altars." In another Bible example, we see the house of Israel had become obstinate and hard-hearted. Therefore, God said to Ezekiel, "I have made your forehead like a diamond, harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them or be terrified by their faces, for they are a rebellious house." Yes, so God helped Ezekiel to have courage or diamond-like hardness in his assignment. So what makes a diamond or any faceted gem sparkle the way that they do? Well, the short answer is that they are expertly cut and polished to maximize the diamond's natural brilliance. The full answer is much more detailed. Now, in the old days, diamonds were cut or faceted with tools like this. Then they were cut and polished using very fine diamond wheels, since only a diamond can scratch or cut another diamond. But now, many diamonds are cut by lasers controlled by computers. Now, diamonds get their brilliance from 3 things: reflection, refraction, and dispersion. Now, reflection, shown here, is the light that hits the diamond and is immediately bounced back up, giving it an instant shine. And while this glimmer is impressive, lots of things are shiny. So reflection is part of it, but only part of the light hitting a diamond is reflected. The rest of the light travels into the diamond. As the light moves through the diamond, it is scattered and fractured, creating the sparkle that diamonds are known for. This is called refraction. In essence, diamonds are tiny, complicated prisms. The white light enters through the top, and then it's angled around the inside of the diamond before being aimed back towards the top and out through the surface. This creates a rainbow effect called dispersion, and it adds to the brilliance of the cut diamond. But another thing that this refraction and dispersion does is they create light and dark areas in the refracted light, depending on where the light hits along the various planes of the diamond. So the dark areas of the diamond are actually very important. These dark areas in the shine may seem counterproductive, but really they are what's needed to give the diamond its trademark brilliance. You see, the dark magnifies the intensity of the light. You could think of it this way. It's like a candle. The flame of a candle always appears brighter when we're in a dark room than it does when we're in a lit room. So it all comes down to contrast. A diamond without contrast might still shine as much, but the shine would be significantly less impressive. It would be missing the characteristic fire that diamonds need to shine. Now, the cut of a diamond also determines just how brilliant it will be. If the shape is too deep or too shallow, much of the light that enters the diamond will get lost, never bouncing around and then out like it's supposed to. A bad cut would let light slip out of the bottom of the diamond. And then, to a lesser extent, the shape of the diamond also determines its shine. These are the cuts that enhance the brilliance of a diamond to get the best gleam, and also to make the actual shape of the diamond varied and different. Now, the clarity of the diamond also affects the shine. There are blemishes on the surface of the diamond that limit the amount of light that can enter the diamond. Inclusions are impurities inside the diamond that prevent the light from moving freely within the gem. These imperfections are like stop signs and speed bumps to the light, and they affect how the light travels. Fewer imperfections or inclusions mean a more brilliant diamond, as there is nothing to detract from the shine and sparkle. Now, it's not easy to get a diamond to sparkle and shine in exactly the right way. Trained professionals need to know just how to cut and polish each stone to get the best results. But you can see the results of this effort every time you notice the way a diamond casts a beautiful display of light and color as it's moved this way and that. The intense array of light and colors produced by a diamond is called a scintillation. And the scintillation is a large part of what makes diamonds such a valuable and cherished gemstone. I asked my wife if she'd like a new diamond ring to celebrate our anniversary. She said, nothing would make me happier. So I got her nothing. Moving on. Another example of God's artwork that is viewed as valuable is the pearl. There is a wonderful collection of valuable pearls at the museum. Now, the ancient Chinese called pearls the hidden soul of the oyster. The Greeks imagined that pearls were formed when lightning entered the sea. And the Romans thought that pearls were the oyster's single tear. And all of this just highlights the mystery and the rarity of pearls. Pearls are so rare that out of every 10,000 oysters harvested, only one contains any kind of natural pearl. And even of those, only a small percentage of pearls are of high enough quality to be sold. The natural pearls were the most sought after of gems until the technique of polishing for precious stones came about. During the Roman heyday, General Vitellius, it has been reported, financed an entire military campaign from the sale of just one of his mother's pearl earrings. Sometimes it can be difficult to get the pearl out of the oyster because oysters can be so shellfish. Moving on. Now, the Bible refers to the preciousness of pearls. As valuable as they are, Job said, a bag full of wisdom is worth more than one of pearls. The pearl is also used in one of Jesus' illustrations. In Matthew 13, 45 and 46, he said, again, the kingdom of the heavens is like a traveling merchant seeking fine pearls. Upon finding one pearl of high value, he went away and promptly sold all the things he had and bought it. Now, back at the museum, we find the Hope Pearl. Does that name sound familiar? Remember, the Hope Diamond is named after Thomas Hope. Well, Thomas's uncle was Henry Philip Hope, who owned 150 natural pearls, the most famous of which is the Hope Pearl. So this large natural pearl is uniquely colored. Parts of it are dark bronze, and it's graded all the way up to pure white. It's probably what's called a blister pearl, a type of pearl that grows on the outside of the shell and not in the middle of the oyster. Now, just about 10 years ago, a fisherman made an amazing discovery in the Philippines, a 2-foot-long pearl inside a giant clam. He took it home to a small village and hid it under his bed. Now, his tiny home eventually burned down, but the 75-pound pearl survived. It's valued at $100 million. Now, you can tell if a pearl is real or fake by rubbing them across your teeth. They should feel gritty, not smooth. Whew. Well, that was quite the journey through the Gems and Minerals exhibit. Now, around the corner from the Hope Diamond is the Moon, Meteorites, and Solar System Gallery. Now, the Bible says that the moon is the lesser luminary for dominating the night, provided by God as a means for marking appointed times. So, even from long ago, the phases of the moon have been used to mark dates and chunks of time. Now, since the lunar month always began with the new moon, the term new moon came to mean month. Now, new moons occur when the moon is directly between the Earth and the sun, as we see here. As the illuminated side of the moon faces away from the Earth, we can't see the new moon. The rare exception, of course, is if there is a solar eclipse at this time. Then we can see just the dark outline of the moon. Now, the average time from one new moon to the next is 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes. The ancient lunar months had either 29 or 30 days. But let's learn some more about the phases of the moon. Actually, one dark night, I sat in my yard to try to figure out the phases of the moon for myself. I was out there for a long time, and then it dawned on me. Moving on. On the Jewish date of Nisan 14, the full moon marked the celebration of the Passover, and then later, the Lord's evening meal, commemorating Jesus' death. Now, this date always occurs on the first full moon following the spring equinox. And the term equinox means equal night. And it's the day and night, when the amount of daylight is the same as the amount of darkness. And of course, there's the famous man in the moon. Now, the images are composed of dark areas of the lunar seas and the lighter highlands of the lunar surface. When we add some contrast, we can kind of see what people mean by the man in the moon. Personally, I think it's a stretch. Now, there have been many songs about the moon. Moon River, How High the Moon, Dancing in the Moonlight, Moon Shadow, just to name a few. Dean Martin had a hit song called That's Amore in 1953. Do you remember it? You may remember the famous line, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. But did you know that there are some other verses that you've probably never heard? When an eel bites your hand and that's not what you planned, that's amore. When your horse munches straw and the bales total 4, that's some more hay. When your sheep go to graze in a damp, marshy place, that's amore. When you're aced your last test like you did all the rest, that's some more A's. When your chocolate gram is so full and so crammed, that's a s'more. When you've had quite enough of this dumb rhyming stuff, that's no more A. All right, moving on. We now move to the section of the museum devoted to meteorites. Now, let's start by defining some terms. A small object flying around in space is called a meteoroid. We think that most meteoroids are fragments of asteroids produced by collisions out in space. If a meteoroid makes contact with the Earth's atmosphere, it then becomes a meteor. If it passes through the Earth's atmosphere and lands on Earth, it is now a meteorite. So why is a weather person called a meteorologist? Do they study meteors? No, the word meteorologist comes from the Greek meteoros, meaning lofty or high in the sky. So meteoroids can become either meteors or meteorites, depending on whether they burn up or not in the Earth's atmosphere. So let's first look at those that don't make it to Earth. These are the meteors. Now, meteors are sometimes called shooting stars or falling stars, but of course, they're not stars. Most meteors are the size of a grain of sand, while a few are the size of small pebbles. Imagine how much energy there is in such a small piece of meteor that we can see it so brightly. Now, every once in a while, a comet's orbital path intersects the orbit of the Earth. Now, that means that the Earth meets the same trail of dust each time it plows through that comet's orbit. When this happens, lots of tiny meteoroids hit the atmosphere, and this is a meteor shower. The two most famous meteor showers are the Perseid, because it's found in the Perseus constellation from our point of view, and the Orionid, found in Orion. Scientists figure that worldwide, there are some 200 million visible meteors in our atmosphere every day. We just usually don't see them because of light pollution. Now, those meteoroids that do make it down to Earth are called meteorites. You can see several examples of meteorites at the museum. Most meteorites are made of rock, while a few consist of iron and nickel. This meteorite was used as a doorstop for 30 years until the owner was told it was worth over $100,000. Now, it's not difficult to believe that our planet has been hit by large objects raining down from space in the past. Proof of these impacts can be found in more than 150 discovered craters that pockmark the Earth's surface. Some of these craters are clearly visible. Some can only be seen by satellites or aircraft, and still others are buried on the ocean floor. In Arizona, USA, an iron meteorite gouged out the spectacular Meteor Crater. This is a hole nearly 4,000 feet across and 600 feet deep. What would the casualties be like if a meteorite like that hit a city? Well, there's a popular display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City that shows if such an object were to hit Manhattan, that crowded borough would be completely destroyed. Now, another famous crater, known as the Chicxulub, produced a scar on the Earth's surface 110 miles in diameter. Located on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, this huge crater is believed to be the impact site of a 6-mile wide asteroid. Some claim that the climate change initiated by this meteor strike caused the extinction of the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. But there are other theories about why the dinosaurs went extinct. You can decide for yourself. Now, meteorites have been found all over the world, and they vary in their size and composition. But the largest found meteorite is this monster named Hoba. It was given the name Hoba because it was discovered on a farm called Hoba West. It weighs 66 tons and is located in Namibia, Africa. It has never been moved from its site. Now, to protect it from the estimated 100,000 meteoroids that will slam into it during its expected 20-year lifespan, the International Space Station is covered with a 1-foot-thick blanket of Kevlar, material used to make bulletproof vests, all to protect it from meteors. Each day, up to 4 billion meteorites fall to the Earth. But don't worry, most of them are minuscule in size. Now, meteorite impacts have been blamed for hundreds of injuries, but only one has been verified by scientists. In 1954, this is Annie Hodges of Alabama. She was struck by an 8-pound meteorite that crashed through her roof and bounced off a radio into her hip while she was taking a nap. So, moving on in the exhibit. Now, this weird-looking Earth is actually a model of what are called tectonic plates. Now, Earth is the only planet in the solar system with plate tectonics. Tectonic plates are giant sections of land that move incredibly slowly. Now, some plates move away from each other, some plates run into each other, and some slide past each other. When plates move away from each other, magma can come out and new rock is formed. If it happens under the ocean, it's called seafloor spreading, and it can look like a giant scar of new rock along that plate boundary. The best example of seafloor spreading is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. In the country of Iceland, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge actually comes out from under the sea. Here we can see the two different plates that are gradually moving farther away from each other each year. There are other places where spreading can be seen above ground, like the Great Rift Valley in Africa and the Red Sea between Africa and Southwest Asia. But when plates run into each other in a convergent boundary, two things can happen. If they are the same kind of plates, they smash into each other. The Himalayan mountains, including the world's tallest mountain, Mount Everest, were formed when two continental plates were forced into each other, and from there they had nowhere to go but up. But most plates that run into each other are not the same density. And here's where we get many of our volcanoes and earthquakes. Speaking of volcanoes, where does a volcano go if it needs to use the bathroom? Well, to the lavatory, of course. Moving on. These converging plates can also cause earthquakes. Now, earthquakes are mentioned in the Bible. A tremendous earthquake, apparently coupled with volcanic action, provided an awe-inspiring setting for the inauguration of the law at Mount Sinai. Here at Exodus, it says, Mount Sinai smoked all over because Jehovah came down upon it in fire, and its smoke was rising like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain was trembling violently. Jehovah also used an earthquake to execute the households of Dathan, Abiram, and Korah. An earthquake threw the Philistines into confusion so that they killed one another in the account about Jonathan. The Bible also tells of an earthquake that freed Paul and Silas from their jail cell in Philippi. And let's not forget about the earthquake that occurred the day that Jesus was put to death. Here at Matthew chapter 27, it says, and look, the curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the holy ones who had fallen asleep were raised up. And people coming out from the tombs after his being raised up entered into the holy city. They became visible to many people. But when the army officer and those with him keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and the things happening, they grew very much afraid and said, certainly this was God's son. Now, the last type of interaction between tectonic plates is when they move past each other in a straight line. This is called a transform fault or a slip fault. Because of this slippage movement, transform faults can usually be identified by cracks on the surface. For example, the San Andreas Fault in California is a transform fault. It's about 700 miles long, but it's not seen above the ground for the whole way. Tectonic relationships can be hard. There's just too much friction between us. It's not my fault. Now, many people in California worry about the big one, a big destructive earthquake. Now, contrary to some beliefs, California is not going to fall off into the Pacific Ocean. And I know it's hard to believe, but some people actually like earthquakes. For example, the writer Shakespeare did, and so did the early American religious group, the Quakers. Sometimes earthquakes happen in the desert where nobody is hurt, but some snakes get rattled. A French cheese factory was affected by an earthquake. Only debris was left. Tragic. So as we wrap up our visit of the moon, meteorites, and solar system gallery, here we again see God's attribute of power. Yes, God shows his power in the way that he created our solar system. We can see God's pure power in the way that he created the many stars in our galaxy. The scriptures talk about his creations. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26 says, lift up your eyes to heaven and see. Who has created these things? It is the one who brings out their army by number. He calls them all by name. Because of his vast dynamic energy and his awe-inspiring power, not one of them is missing. The Bible also described how the earth was supported and described the earth's shape many centuries before man verified the truth of the Bible. Job said, he stretches out the northern sky over empty space, suspending the earth upon nothing. Science has found that since the earth is in outer space and it is in a vacuum, it literally sits upon nothing. And Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, there is one who dwells above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. He is stretching out the heavens like a fine gauze, and he spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. So how do you suppose the Bible writers knew these things long before they were confirmed by science? It's because the Bible is the reliable word of God. Its accuracy in science gives us confidence that what it says about everything else is also true. So I hope you've enjoyed the second part of our tour from the National Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian. We'll finish our tour of the museum in part 3. So keep your eyes peeled on the My Virtual Bible Tours website for the date and time of that tour. Right. And then finally, this tour is free. This tour is absolutely free. But as you can imagine, there are some expenses involved in having the Zoom meeting. Several of us are in full-time service. So if you are moved to donate, here is the means that you can do that, but it is not required at all. All right, and that brings our tour to an end. I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have any questions or comments or other discussion. So I see a few